Myself and Sibu Sisu are here to kind of provide advice and support when necessary. So for those who haven't engaged with us yet, then please feel free to come along and have a discussion. Tell us about your ideas, tell us about your business, and we'll try and find a way to kind of support you to grow and develop it in the best way that you can. We've got quite a nice attendance here, and we have today Ryan Munn from Bristol and Bath Regional Capital. He is a people-centered investor. Wow. Hopefully. And he's looking to invest in those individuals, in those businesses that are purpose-driven within communities and can deliver some social impact and are prepared to invest themselves and their businesses in growing through the development of their enterprises for themselves, people, planet, wherever that social impact is. They believe, Bristol and Bath Regional Capital, that purposeful businesses, charities and social enterprises will help drive change in our region, and they will present solutions that satisfy the needs of our communities in our region. So hopefully I have a number of those type of founders in on this call, and there's another one coming in. And obviously when we're looking at our businesses, our social enterprises, one of the aspects we're looking at is how do we grow our business? And when you're looking at how you grow your business, one of the key aspects of that is, do we have enough finance to grow our businesses? So it's a fairly fundamental element of thinking about your enterprise, your social enterprise, and how you can grow it. And in many regards, often if we are in the purposeful business space, we focus a great deal on grants as being potentially the way to start that up and to take it forward. But fundamentally, there's a problem with grants because they run out. And every time they run out, you have to apply for another grant, and you have to cross your fingers and hope that those grants are still available, or they are funding through grants the things that you do or want to do. That can remove an element of self-reliance, and in my feeling, the potential of social investment is to kind of operate your social enterprise or operate your enterprise in a way that delivers purposefulness, but also enables you to invest in the short, medium, long term in your business. And one of the things that an investor like Bristol and Bath Regional Capital does is it invests for that short, medium, and long term in your business. So I'd like to introduce again Ryan Munn, who's going to try and demystify the dark world in which he has inhabited for 20 years.
Dark arts, yeah.
So thank you.
Great, thanks, Derek. I've got this lapel mic, so I think I'm being picked up. I think everyone in this room can hear me. Can everyone hear me all right on Zoom? I'm going to assume that was a yes.
No, it's just really good to get feedback that they can.
You can hear us? Hi, hello. Great. Yeah, well, thanks. Yeah, thanks, Derek. Really appreciate that. So I think what's nice about this is that we can just treat it a little bit like a living room setting. So I'm hoping that, I brought a slide deck. We can kind of go through that and look at some of the materials I brought, but use that as a basis for just having a chat, basically, and really encourage those who are on Zoom to participate in that. Just to say, if you want to just be here and listen to that chat, that's cool too. So don't want to, whatever you want to get out of this, I want you to try and get that out of it. So, but I think the first place to start is, Derek's right. The reason I'm here is because I do have a bit of insight into what's, when you're looking for investment for your idea, what's the person on the other side of the table who's looking to invest? What are they thinking? And I think that's my hope for tonight, is like just a bit more insight into like, how are they looking at the business, or how are they looking at it, so that you have a bit of preparation to do that well. And we were talking beforehand about all the time really that needs to go into applying for investment, whether that be a bank loan or or a bit of investment, early stage investment. A lot of time, frankly, has got to go into grants as well, right? So when you're seeking money for your business, there's a lot of time that needs to go into that, and no one's paying you for that time. No one's paying you to run your business. For who's running the business when you're spending time doing all this application? So it's in your best interest to figure out how to do that in the most effective way possible, right? So I think I'm just trying to help open that up a bit. So I think probably to start off with, what we can do is we can just sort of go around the coffee table, as it were, or whatever, and just share a bit about where everyone's at and what they're kind of looking for. So I was thinking we could just share kind of our name, what we're doing, so kind of our business idea or what we're working on, and what do you need? Like, what are you needing? What's the sort of next step? So I'll kick it off. Derek's already introduced me, but I'm Ryan, and I work for Bristol and Bath Regional Capital, and we're a place-based investor, which means that we want to invest in places, and that means investing in communities and people. We still want to have, we still need to make that sustainable, so we need to see a return coming from that, overall from that investment. So we don't really do a whole lot of grants, but we do a variety of different other tools to try and help a business grow. And we do look at our return, as it were, as in a much more holistic way, right? So it's not just about the rate that we can charge, for instance. It's also about the benefit to the community. So we have a different way of looking at some of those things, which I think will come out a bit tonight. What am I looking for? Well, I'm looking to just get to know people that are doing stuff in the community. That's basically what I'm looking to do, because that's the starting point, right? It's a starting point of a relationship, of just that knowledge, of understanding. There's been a number of investments that we've been able to do that other funders or banks haven't been able to do, because we know the place. We know kind of what's, say it's a development that's not got planning permission yet or whatever. Well, we can kind of we can know a little bit more about whether that's going to get planning than, say, someone who's in London who doesn't know anything about what's happening in Bristol. It's more of a relational, we're trying to do things in a more relational way. So that's a bit about me. I think rather than going around the table or whatever, I'll just say, let's have 10 minutes or so, 5 to 10 minutes of just whoever wants to share about who they are, what they're doing, and what they need. Does that sound right? Do you want to?
I'll kick off if
Okay, where's the mic for?
Thank you very much. My name's Amrish. I have an office around the corner. We're called the Bristol Rainforest. Our activity started quite by accident, because a head teacher that went by saw the trees in my office, put his head around the corner, and I said, "Would you like a tree for your school?" That was in 2017. Since then, we've filled 20-odd schools with individual trees, but in 1 or 2 places, we've created whole rainforest rooms for children. And children do, especially in nursery schools, children do circle time in there. You create this wonderful calm setting, and you get them to ask each other, because when you're calm, your attention goes up, and you can address that attention towards each other. And it's the best thing you can do for mental well-being, for feeling valued. And we get staff to do that as well. I will often go in as a volunteer to the school, and I will talk to children, and the head teacher will be waiting, but I don't stop talking to the child, because that child is the important person in that. Very recently, from the middle of this year, we got a grant from Friends of the Earth to grow vertical vegetables in the playground of that nursery. So kids are now running around with kale growing on the walls. This has proved to be so inspirational and so popular. We're looking at I'm literally filling in a grant for the Bristol Local Food Fund, so that we can get money to put 10 systems like that into schools. Great. Now, ultimately, as you say, we don't want to be a grant-based, our income doesn't want to be just from grants, but how else? So I need some advice on how else we can get an income, because we don't want to just work in schools. We also want to work in communities. I mean, just around the corner, Wilder Street, if you cross over Brigstock Road, and you come to where my office is, the lime green building, you all walk by it, I'm sure. Opposite there's a car park, and there's the homeless shelter. People go there, but there's a 30-meter long wall on concrete. There's no soil there, but we could put on that wall a 30-meter long, 2-meter tall vertical vegetable growing setup. Each meter will produce 30 head of vegetables. So that's 1,800 bits of kale or cabbages, I mean, you can actually grow cabbages in this system. So in that sense, we could very well derive an income from selling that produce. But we want to be very much more connected with the community. So we actually want to get the community involved. Yep. We want the community to eat the produce in situ, almost. We want to create find partners who will set up ways of cooking that food and delivering it to the community. So those are the ideas we want to go. Income, where else apart from grants? And obviously I want to know from you in terms of investment, is it a simple percentage return? And timescales.
So I'm going to use this to just sort of riff off a little bit and just sort of do a little bit of, so basically what you're looking at right there is what we might call a sort of cross-subsidization model, right? So you go into schools and you find, say, schools who are willing to pay out of their D&E funding. You've got to prove the case to them, right? But that's your customer, and that provides you a bit of income to then go and make a loss by putting, you say, a community garden in the community somewhere where you might not be able to make quite as much income.
It's going to be the other way around almost. The schools are the tough ones because of their budgetary constraints at the moment.
Well, I mean, so it could be the other way around. I wouldn't give the schools a free ride, but but so those are this. So this cross-subsidization model is one way of thinking about social enterprise, where you make money over here doing one thing, or with one customer, and then that helps you provide the income to be able to make a loss over here, where you don't want to charge as much, for instance. Thank you. Does anyone else want to? Should we go around?
Let's go round. That's the best.
Good evening, everyone. I'm known as Andrew, also DJ Star. I've got a number of hats on in terms of media and broadcasting and promotion. So I do radio broadcasting. I also host a club night and got a merchandise strand of that. One of the things I'm trying to explore, which is slightly a bit different, during COVID, I set up a Facebook page which is called Bristol, just a take on the word of history, but putting Brist in front of it. And the idea was just trying to reconnect friends and families who weren't able to speak to or see each other during lockdown, and just reconnecting on Facebook. And the idea was really was encouraging people to share pictures of memories that they have growing up in Bristol. During the 80s, we were actually concentrating from. And it really started from a post that I see someone sharing a photo of me when I was a teenager, a really young looking me. And I just asked her if she had any more photos, and she said, yeah. So I said, why don't we set up a closed group of us and try and reconnect with friends we haven't seen for a long time, friends, just find out where they are in their life and just share photos of sort of growing up with each other. Cut a long story short, the group that was supposed to start with about 20 of us exploded, and it's got like 2,000 people in there. There was loads of people just sharing photos, and people just really commented how they found the group really helpful during lockdown, and helping them get through it emotionally, but also just reconnecting with lost friends, people actually realizing that people who they never knew were actually in the same school just by the fact of some of the photos and images that was being shared. There were flyers of old club nights and stuff like that. So it just got me thinking, and interestingly enough, Marvin Rees was quite active in the group, actually talking about the Mecca ice skating rink, for those of you old enough to remember that. And yeah, it was just really interesting to see how supportive the group was. So I just was toying with the idea, how can I turn, one, I wanted to try and set up a CIC loosely based around it, but also try and look at creating an exhibition around some of the stories that have been told, some of the pictures that have been included, but also look at it from a historical point of view as well, where we could probably take a project like this into the schools and talk about some of the history of Bristol that isn't necessarily shared, and also hear from the different cultures that existed, particularly around the 80s. And I'm looking from the point of view from someone who used to go out during the 80s. There was a lot of us who used to go to particular events, and I'm talking about the early stages of before Massive Attack became who they were. They were known as Wild Bunch. So they used to do a lot of parties around this particular area. So there's a lot of us who connected with each other and got so many stories, images of club nights, dugout, and all of these places. So yeah, I just wanted to see how I could get that into, set up maybe a CIC. I keep badgering on Sibs, as he well knows, that I want to have a chat with him, but trying to make that happen, but look at the historical value of it, and yeah, just see how it can flourish from there, really.
Oh, that's great.
And I've had a couple of interesting conversations with a few people from the Bristol Museum and different people, Asher Craig and a few other people who are supportive with the idea. So I just saw your message on Facebook, it was, and I thought this sounds like something interested to come along and find out a bit more.
Was it Andrews?
Andrews,
okay. Yeah, no, that's great. It's funny, the 80s have a real nostalgia right now, don't they?
It certainly
I was listening, I was overhearing some random girl who was probably about, 15 or 16. She's just in a store. This was a couple days ago, and she's like, oh, I really wish that I grew up in the 80s. And I stopped, and she was there with her mom, and I was like, do you know what? I was just saying that. I grew up in the 80s. I was like, I wish I could bring my kids up in the 80s. I mean, they weren't all rogue.
I was going to say, there was tough times
but,
as well.
There was tough times too, but, but it's interesting that you said, so your model, when it comes to investment, I think the question that I'm always asking is, well, how much does it need outside funding, and how much does it need, right? So if you look at something like Humans of New York, right, like that probably didn't get any outside funding. It was probably just them building this community. And what you need to figure out is, okay, well, great. So then how do I pay for my time, right? Because it's your time building that up, right? But often maybe the outside funding's not necessarily the best way of doing that, because then what you give up in exchange in terms of having to pay things back or giving up a certain portion of the business or whatever might be a bit too risky. So, I think whereas we like to see businesses grow healthily, often you can do that off of just little iterative steps where you do something and then make a bit of revenue, and then do something else and then make a bit more revenue, and then it stays nice and controlled for you as well. So, it's not a given that we'll have this we'll have a conversation and then say, oh well, yeah, funding's actually the best thing for you, right? Because maybe a different sort of growth pathway is better for you to for the long term vision of the business. But anyways,
I think there's something right now closing on Friday, which is Heritage England program. With School of Social Entrepreneur. So it comes with £4,000 to kind of give you time, and then they meet every month for 12 months to kind of give an update and mentoring and group discussions about how the programs go. So if that's what you're thinking of as a CIC, that's a good way to start, because automatically it builds a relationship with Heritage Lodging, which is where your project kind of sits. Then you've got something to start off with Arts Council or Contact and those kind of stuff, because this kind of investments normally starts from 50,000 up.
Yeah, I mean, and we do have with the local access program, we'll have a bit of a pot quite soon for smaller than 50,000 funding. But still, I would wonder, can you actually grab some of that sort of Arts Council funding? Because this is the thing, what Derek mentioned is, is with grant funding. Grant funding's not bad, but the question is, how can you turn grant funding into sustainable revenue? Right? It's not, it's taking that grant funding and then not saying, okay, well, I'm gonna use the grant funding to then go and get more grant funding, and then more grant funding, and then more grant funding. It's like, well, how can I use, and this, you know, startups in the sort of, in the commercial space do this all the time, where they say, okay, great, I'm gonna get an Innovate UK grant or some other grant money, and then that's gonna set me up to then get revenue and investment as you go forward. You might not need investment, it might just set you up to start the revenue wheels turning. Anyway, thank you for sharing.
Can you send me
Andrew.
the info
That's
on
great.
that, Sibs? Yeah. No pressure.
Hi.
Hi.
I hate my voice. I
no.
thought I was thinking all that time, listening, and I was like, don't put yourself down as soon as you get the mic.
No,
but I
don't
did
do
it.
it. Reflex.
I'm Alexandra Lindsay. I really don't need a mic. My voice is loud enough. Do you need
Just
it?
for the
All
people
right.
online. Yeah.
Hello.
Sorry, I didn't catch your name.
Alexandra Lindsay.
Alexandra, great, thank you.
So I'm really like a one-woman band who has got a lot of vision, ambition. Like I want to be involved in so much, but my personal journey has kind of been in a juxtaposition. So recently I've got the gumption, like I've found God on my journey. So I've got the gumption, amen to that, sister. I got the gumption to basically empower myself again and try again. And so I'm trying to come back into the world. My vision this time around was to create a community space called Commune. So it's going to be geared around people in person and really actually taking time to listen to what the people need rather than always saying, this is what we got for you. It's kind of an umbrella thing of encompassing lots of different elements of life. So pretty much probably whatever any of you are going to be mentioning, I'd be like, we need to link up. It's that kind of vision where it's not accustomed to one person, one thing. It wants to reach everyone. I've met with Derek briefly, like about a week ago, and he was basically saying, you know, I need to get myself back into the community, and I mentioned poetry, so he suggested going to see some poetry, getting a community that way to build my kind of footfall instead of like having a location and know people to come. But I suppose the main notion is it's about the people. So I want it to be, let's give you a vision of it. You got a mirror like in the window, automatically you're reflecting on yourself. But also there's like a garden, like a little mini Zen garden. You mentioned like living walls. I was always like, ooh, like that's like amazing.
Yeah.
Like you got like a little garden. It's called Commune, so already it's letting you know, come together. There's a stage, there's a sofa area, there's a kitchen. We want to put on like, I don't know, a buffet. You can have a banquet, you know, something to include everyone. So someone who's not able to afford something and people who are able to afford something, all different walks of life coming together in one space to teach and learn. So that can be through a debate one night or poetry, theater. So it's quite diverse, my vision, but the main like backbone of it is about the people.
Yeah.
So I suppose the nutshell would be a stage, a sofa, and me. Do you know what I mean? Like just to facilitate. And I suppose I'm just coming out to, I don't know, step out and just try and broaden my horizon, really, you know? I spent a lot of time isolated.
Yeah.
So being someone with a lot of passion and vision, it's a struggle to kind of temper that feeling so isolated, being so isolated. But I suppose if I can step out and say, you know, I'm not going to be defeated by this, then that could be a good role model for other people.
Yeah.
And if I can succeed in creating this space, it will be like a self-fulfilling thing. It's not really about me making money. It's kind of just providing a service, giving people a platform, guidance, you know, someone to talk to, confide in, and building that community for like humanity.
Yeah.
Because I find community ends up becoming a niche thing where we end up focusing on our differences rather than our similarities.
Yeah.
So my vision is very much around coming together with an openness to convene. So yeah, it covers everything.
No,
you know, that's just living. It's
that's
just
really
living.
interesting,
It's hard to really
Alexandra. Yeah.
put it concisely.
Yeah.
Sure, please do.
I know you said about creating the space,
Right.
or having like a centre. But have you considered creating the space within something that already exists, such as like a comedy centre?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
yeah,
Definitely.
because my thought behind that would be like proven concept.
Yeah.
So before getting the space, actually have proof that the concept works and that there's a community for it.
Yeah.
There's already an audience.
Definitely.
Have you considered that? Actually?
Yeah, like I say, like I'm on my kind of like one-man band thing. So it's not every day that I'm feeling like I can conquer, you know?
Yeah.
So it's like, even being here today, you know what I mean? I was trying to catch the bus, I missed the bus, and that was my excuse not to come. And then I was like, I'm calling a taxi. You know what I mean? So I made it.
Well done.
And yeah, I appreciate that feedback.
Well
That's
done.
definitely something I want to look into.
So
But,
Alexandra,
yeah.
that's interesting. It's funny. I mean, you stole my thunder to a certain degree. It's fine. It's great. I love it. What am I here for? But yeah, I mean, so something like that, where it's like, can you try it out, right? I have talked to a number of community spaces that sort of are quite. They've got sort of a set vision of how it's going to be, and it's either going to be they're going to jump from this level to this level right away, or kind of nothing. And I want there's a number of different ways in which you can sort of say, yeah, people are gathering around this, right? So I've got a friend who's got a restaurant in London, and she started out, I think it was 7 or 8 years ago, just doing pop-ups, right? So she would take a space that was vacant in the evening or something and just do an evening pop-up once in a while, right? So then you just make some contacts, you grow, you grow in confidence, you know, those kinds of things. And it's very low investment, low commitment to a certain degree, right? So, you know, I wonder if there's ways of of getting it out there, or just doing a pop-up, or just doing something where you can then say, okay, great, I'm growing in confidence, people are getting, you know, and then you can refine your idea, you know, those kinds of things.
My idea is like there, but it's how to articulate it to other people. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's set in myself.
But maybe they
but it's
need
how
to see it.
Yeah.
Before they can, you know, maybe it's something that isn't articulated, it's something that's experienced, right? Or whatever. So anyways, I'll be coming back to these things later on, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, on that, what you were saying, like basically creating a platform for you to showcase what you want to take to another level would be cool. On that note, I'm Aisha McIntosh, part of Life 2020. So what we are a business. We started almost 3 years ago as a platform to provide education, training, and well-being and business support. How we've been doing that so far is with a collective of us, there's 3 of us. We've kind of put our money together in a pot to do all these things. So how we've supported people with business, we've provided them a place to showcase their business by doing monthly markets, pop-ups, also with the business stuff, we've been doing business showcase. So twice a year we've done a business showcase where young people have come on stage showcasing their art, whether it be music, poetry, dance, or what's the young ones into now, my son, you know, rap or TikTok, grime, whatever it is. But yeah, so it brings everyone together, all the family, all walks of life, ages, and everything like that. With the wellbeing stuff, which that might be of interest with you, we've been doing wellbeing days for women, which involves yoga, sound bath meditation, chakra healing, just talking, listening, meditation. And we've also done like well-being days for men as well. And we've also, on the side of the, gosh, I'm saying, that's so annoying.
Fashion show?
The fashion show, yeah, we've got our next, sorry, we've got our next pop-up, what we call Shop and Chill, taking it away from the monthly markets, calling it Shop and Chill, creating a vibe, again, a space where people can come, have treatments, food, just, again, a friendly place for all the family and everyone to come together. And we've also been doing that. We also have a business directory as well, so you can check it out, Life 2020 UK. And it's got a place where you can go and check out all the businesses, and we're building on top of that as well. And yeah, I think that's pretty much covers most stuff that we do.
Great. Thanks, Aisha. Brilliant.
Where's the directory there?
It's on the Life 2020.
On your website?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, have you seen
How
that?
do we go about getting those?
Oh, you just,
Send you the information.
yeah, via email or WhatsApp. I can send it out to you, actually.
So people in the sort of investment, sort of equity space or venture cap. I know there was a venture capitalist here last time, and so they'll talk a lot about a word they call traction, right? And so the word traction is basically showing that that you're moving forward, that you've got some sort of ability to capture a market or to get some people together to generate some revenue. So what you're doing on with some of the pop-ups and with fashion shows and all that kind of stuff is showing that you're growing that traction with this group of people who are interested in what Life 2020 is doing, and also hopefully willing to buy something. Do you know what I mean? To generate some revenue. So that's always the challenge at the early stage, is sort of showing that that's growing, right? So you're doing, you're approaching it in the right way, or the right way for you, which is sort of as low investment as possible, as wide a reach as possible, right?
And we're all like everyone on the platform, like Lorraine does food, I'm beautician. So we've just been contracted to do a staycation for a group of people. Oh, sorry. For a group of people, which will get paid for through the Life platform, but we'll pay ourselves.
Yeah.
So that's how we generate money. So we pay ourselves for the services that we provide, which is cool. But the next level for us is to set up a CIC so that we can offer everything that we've been doing already. We've been charging people, and that's how we generate our money. But we want to offer free services now for people under 21. So that's what we're going to need the money for.
Yeah, cool. Okay,
So,
great. Diamond?
Hi, can you hear me properly? Right, I'm Diamond. I run Diamond Social Community Hub, which is based at Imperial Apartments, Whitchurch Lane, South Bristol. Basically what happened is I moved to the apartments. I'm quite a passionate person within myself. I moved to the apartments and I saw a need within the community. There was no amenities around the local area. It was hard to get anywhere. No shops, no pubs, no restaurants, nothing around. I've got another business, which is not included in this business, but I've got another business. So with my business mind, I thought to myself, what can I do here? So I thought, right, there's no shop. My people need a shop. There's nowhere for them to go. I asked the building owner, it's Carradine who own the building, they're a property development company. I asked them, Carradine, can you give us a shop or give us a facility to use, and I will create that space into a shop. At that time, they didn't really know me or anything like that, so the answer to that was a no. I then said, okay, that's fine, no problem. So I bought my own shop. I bought my own shop and put it there. Out of a container, I turned it into a nice little sweet shop, a convenience store. selling all the local produce, everything that everybody needed. It went really well. It was a big success. It still is a big success. Therefore, I started seeing that everybody wanted food. There's no food around. It's all low-income families. It's a
Your food is in the oven. Your chicken's in the oven. Peri peri chicken.
Say that. What did she say? Oh, she's talking to somebody. I just realised. Yeah. So then I then saw a need that they wanted food. So I thought, okay, what can I do? So then I opened up a cafe. So the cafe is now on the estate. So on the estate, there's the shop and the cafe. Whilst being on there, I started creating work opportunities, providing employability, and creating like a space where people could come and get out of their flats to stop isolation, and kind of have a community space just to come out and chat. Within that platform, I then created a thing called the Free Talk. The Free Talk is now a group which is facilitated throughout Bristol as one of the key tools of methods for change. So in that structure that I've built, what they do is it's like an open platform, kind of cognitive therapy thing for mindfulness and well-being, building up your self-esteem and platforming yourself, etc., etc. I do motivational speaking alongside that, so I encourage people to, build their skill set, stand for who they are, and strive for success. That's exactly what I do. After that, I created the Hub. So that's where Diamond Social Community Hub comes into it. Now, Diamond Social Community Hub, I created it as a CIC. In there, I offer loads of things, providing health and well-being, health inequalities. I've put on the first health clinics for South Bristol ever to have. We do wound dressing in there, BDP, substance misuse, DHI, loads of different organisations I work with, platforming that. I also work with Learn West, who is run by the council as well, to upskill the people, providing all the accredited courses and stuff, so forth. Alongside that, I'm a chair of the board on Vision BAME. So then I tackle local things, what's happening within the community to incorporate everybody in. Alongside that now, my vision was to create semi-independence living, to create sustainable housing. So the housing development would run alongside with the Hub, providing support for people with complex needs. The whole space would be a space which is utilised at the bottom as a hub, going out for the wider community to benefit from, but also the tenants living in the building. They can then come downstairs, get the support that they need, and the people from outside can come and have positive engagement with inside the building. Everybody's winning. Now, the housing side of it, that's where the investment comes in. That's not going to be the CIC. I've given loads to the community and back to the community all the time. I give. Yeah. So that's where now it's like I'm platforming myself and trying to think about sustainability for myself and ways to generate a good income.
Yeah. So I mean, the housing bit obviously is something that you when you're talking about a big capital investment, you need that to work. And the place to talk about with that is Homes England, because they're the ones who subsidize, the affordable housing in this country, basically. But with the Hub, there's also an interesting sort of when we're talking about a physical space, I always think of this. I'm North American, I'm Canadian, so I think of shopping malls, right? Right. But a shopping mall, we'll always think of who's your anchor tenant, right? Who's the tenant who's going to be there for the long haul? That's reliable, right? And often in a shopping mall, we'll seek to find some sort of government entity like the post office or something to be an anchor tenant, because that's going to give you the basis to say, okay, well, if these other tenants go up and down, that's okay. So I don't know if you're familiar with the model that the park has. But that's quite interesting, because what they've done is the people who come into the community to provide the services, they're kind of the anchor tenant, right? So, you know, it could be, you know, the NHS coming in trying to do kind of well-being or social prescribing, you know, things like that. So then that way you've got some guaranteed income to be able to go and do that other stuff.
And that's that's exactly it, because the project that I've got is a duplicable project. It can be duplicated throughout the city because it's a much needed service. What happens is, for South Bristol especially, is the service providers over there are only the ones from South Bristol. We only really got HWCP, which is there. I work with HWCP, and I have also acquired, I'm the bid winner for the tenant centre, which is over there. So I have won the tenant centre, although the tenant centre is going to take a long time before it gets planning permission from the council.
It takes forever. Yeah, it does.
It's going to be even open. But the service that I've got is so good. You know, I've done measurable impact, recorded it as well.
Which is important.
Yeah. They've made videos and everything like that. So I've got so much evidence to show. The project needs to be duplicated.
So that you bring up a good point, Diamond, which is important, which is when if you're setting out, particularly if you're setting up as a CIC and you're looking at potentially getting some investment at some point in the future, even if you might, right? Even if you might reach out to a social investor such as us or Trade-offs or Resonance or whoever else is in the, you know, they not only want to know that you've been trading a little bit, you know, successfully, and that's been growing, but they want to see that you've got a handle on what your impact actually is, right? Now, there's a possibility that you can go overboard on that and try to track almost everything, right? But what I would recommend is, if you're a CIC, that you pick some metrics. You know, it might be people coming in per week. It might be, you know, you might start an annual survey to say, you know, has this benefited you? You know, things like that. That's just something that you can go and say, this is hard evidence that this is the impact. You know, like, you know, the number of kids who are seeing, there does need to be some sort of measurable thing there for social investors. Unfortunately, and this is the case, you know, you've got to prove yourself financially, but you've also got to prove yourself on the impact side of things, right? Now, the benefit for that is that then you get someone who actually understands what you're trying to do from an impact perspective. So if things get a little wobbly on the financial perspective, they're usually really willing to work with you. Right, that's sort of the payback there. Now, I'm just aware that this is fascinating, and I'm having a great time. But I'm aware that this has been a little bit longer than 10 minutes. So yeah, can we? Thanks, Diamond, and can we just get Latoya and then those who are on Zoom.
Oh, it feels weird now. I've got a mic in my hand.
Don't rush. But yeah,
I can't see the camera. Good. Okay. I am Latoya Adlam, the founder of Kitchen Cosmetics, which is a wellbeing brand. We create vegan skin and hair care, wellbeing products that enhance individuals' wellbeing and improves their wellbeing at affordable prices. We are 4 years old this month, and we are on 19 different platforms online and in 5 different stores. We started with a range of free products. We now have 14, with that expanding this year. We've got makeup, homeware and accessories coming out. And I'm in need of money.
What's been the sort of barrier? What's restricting your growth right now?
So the thing that's restricting our growth right now is equipment. So I would like some money in order to invest in better equipment so that we can create more make products at a faster rate, and then
manufacturing them.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. It's not just a brand that you're then outsourcing the manufacturing.
No, everything's in-house.
Okay.
Yeah. So if we had better equipment, we would be able to fulfill. So there's contracts that we've been offered with large retail stores. And we'd be able to fulfill those contracts by having better equipment. And not only just that, there's also other B2B funnels that would be able to take advantage of, such as supplying products for boutiques, hotels, Airbnbs, that kind of thing, things that we've been offered before, but we've never been able to take advantage of because we can't fulfill those contracts due to our equipment that I have when we first started 4 years ago. So.
Okay, so that's what's called a capital investment, right? So capital being like things. Often, or capital could be a platform, like a web platform that you're investing, but it's something that you're going to buy up front and it's going to provide value for you over a number of years, right? Whereas you might, the other type of loan that you might get would be a working capital investment, which is basically to help with your cash flow, because you have to buy product.
We need that too.
And then you only get paid for that once it gets sold. So you've got a cash flow that looks like this, and it goes into the negative, and then up again, and then you got to pay salaries, and it goes into the negative again. So that's a working capital loan. So Latoya probably needs that.
And I don't know, this is really weird. And money for a shop. So we're looking, at the moment we do about anywhere between 8 and 12 events a month. So we do pop-ups all around the country. But we would like a permanent space, not just because we would like one, but actually our audience have stated that they would like a permanent space. We did have a space last month, so we've got records to show how having one fixed location and the positive impact that has on the business. So yeah, okay, I'm putting this down.
And this is just quite helpful for everyone. So how early on in sort of the kind of looking for money journey are you? And have you got quite a lot of resistance? What's your experience been so far?
Mix. So I've had some organizations that have offered investment, none in which we've taken as of yet, because they haven't been quite the right partnerships, and we have been given grants before, so yeah.
In terms of like, do you think it's too expensive, like the money you've been offered has been too expensive, or you didn't really feel like you were comfortable with the organization, or?
A bit of both. I think at one point I think it was too premature. I didn't really understand a lot about the business, and sort of I've always understood the bigger vision of the business, but I guess I just felt a little bit out of depth, and I didn't feel that the company that was offering the investment, they weren't gonna like help me with it, like they were just gonna basically give me money
and charge you for
and
it.
I wanted support.
Yeah, okay.
Kind of move you aside and then have their own vision.
No, not even that. No, I think I need hands-on support.
It's not just the money you want, like you say, you want some support, help along the way.
So at the moment, we're trying to get some funds together, because I would like to hire a business development manager, maybe like February-ish.
Okay.
So someone who has developed a business before.
So that's really interesting just to share because so when you're on this journey that we're thinking about, like, well, what do investors want? You need to also be thinking, well, what do I want? Right?
Yeah.
Because this is even if it's just a loan that you're paying back for, it's a capital loan or something that you're just paying back, it's still a relationship. You're going to be doing it over the next 4 or 5 years. You want to know that you trust that person. You want to know that they're, supportive of you. In business, things go like this. We're hitting probably a rocky period right now. You want to know that the people that are around you are supportive of you. So yeah, that's really helpful. Thanks.
I didn't just want to like take money from a bank or whatever. I've been really cautious, and I know Ed. I know Ed very well.
Good.
So he's great.
I'd like when sometimes the actual support is better than the money.
Yeah.
You
exactly.
Want somebody who's really going to be good support.
I need both.
Yeah.
I need both.
Great. Can we move to those two that are on Zoom?
Hiya. First, I'd like to apologize. I thought I put myself on mute. I was shouting at my son to take his food from the oven. So apologize for that. Yes, it's a bit, I'm not really sure. What it is that I work for a small charity. We're not CIC, and we're in the environmental nature sector. But what it is that, we get grants and all the rest of it. But we want to look, we've got 2 ideas or businesses which are linked to, one is directly linked to us because it's transport basically. We need to sort out minibuses, and we thought if we're going to buy minibuses or lease minibuses, we may as well treat it as a business to get income for ourselves. That's one side. And the other side is something linked to that, is not so much linked to the organization we are, is more to link to the family that I'm part of, but it also suits the environmental sector. So both parts are basically, I would say, we started in the investigating stage, but we're not sure whether it should be linked directly to our charity or standalone businesses that we pay, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And the main thing, and then linking that, the main costing is going to be, when I say equipment, vans and like 2 minibuses starting off with, if not 4 in the future, but 2 minibuses, and then some other vans or lorries that we need for the other business.
Yeah.
That's the main cost, if that may upfront cost, and then salaries, of course. And again, at the moment, we don't pay rent in terms of location, in terms of offices. We've got somewhere free, which is fantastic in terms of freeness, but we can't bring people there really. You know, it's a main, basically it's a restaurant that's empty during the day and we can use the space free. But it's not the most professional settings to, oh, by the way, do you want to come down to this restaurant? What we're using, kind of thing. So that's all it is. And we're trying to work out whether if we have all 3 based in the same place, that means we're saving rent, parking, you know, all that kind of practical side.
Yes, yes. No, community transport's an interesting one because it's sort of assumed that the local authority or the bus company sort of does that, and we all know in Bristol that that's not necessarily the case, is it? So yeah, that's something to actually think about. I think how would you get enough to get the vans operational so then you could then prove?
No, I mean, we actually, no, what's happened is we already use minibuses. What's happened is we run camps and we need minibuses, and Bristol Community Transport has gone bankrupt in Bristol. So as a result, there's no minibuses that we can even get. Forget about price-wise, gone up 150 a day to 350 minimum a day.
Yeah.
So it's not, so we need the minibuses full stop. So for us is, do we buy them as part of us, or do we treat as separate business and then we can rent out the minibuses when they're free?
Yeah, that, I mean, well, that's exactly what, so one of the companies we've invested in is a company that does zero carbon delivery in the city. It's called Zero E, and they've purchased some electric vans for their deliveries. And what they've been one of their strategies was, when they're not doing deliveries in the vans during the day, they're doing something else with them. They're doing sort of rebalancing with some of the scooters at night. Right, so that helps bring in income. So it's the other idea, Lily, that you've got of like, okay, great, well, we'll use this asset for us when we need it, but then we'll rent it out or let other people, so that it provides a bit of income for us when it's not being used. The last thing you want is a idle asset that's costing you money and not doing anything, right? Yeah, very interesting. Thank you, Lily. That's great. Noreen?
I did send you a message because I wanted to find out if this program is targeting businesses solely based in the Southwest.
Well, we do as Bristol Bath Regional Capital. We're in the Southwest. We have and one of the funds that we run. I'm not sure whether to look over there or look there. So we do look at the Southwest, but I'm hoping that some of the stuff that we're talking about and that I can share can be applicable to other other funders who might look more broadly.
Right. So I'm seeking funding for startup ideas I've got. I'm an experienced counsellor and mediator for my local council, and I've now owned a property that I wanted to turn into a sanctuary and a restaurant. And this sanctuary will benefit people from all over the UK, particularly women. And it can be gender specific, so men only or women only. And it's based in Wales to kind of give a well-being awareness for mental health, domestic violence, and just work stress-related issues So I'm looking for funding. I've got a business plan that I feel will influence capital attraction. I also think the experience I've had over the years as a counselor, as a community well-being practitioner does help. But I'm tapping into where those funding, social funding and social investments are. So, and so I come across your network in my email. I don't know how, and that's why I'm on the program.
Great. And Noreen, just so that I'm clear, are you looking for, would your investment be to, for kind of salaries in the startup phase, or are you
Yeah,
thinking of wanting to buy a property as well?
no. So we now have a property which hosts 2 shops and 3-bed flat above with a resourced attic. So we're looking to use the flat for sanctuary work, and the shop will have a restaurant there. So we're looking for investors. We're looking for investors to renovate the property and
Renovation.
to equip the property for those purposes.
Okay, great. Well, I think I'd like to find out a little bit more. I've got some friends who ran a retreat center for about 10 years
Right.
in Wales, and they did quite a few well-being retreats and
Yeah.
Enneagram stuff, and and all that. But then in the off time, they use which we were talking about. Is when the off time they hired out some of the places on Airbnb, so it gave them something,
And
so building that package together that can say, actually, okay, we've got multiple ways of earning income from this property, which I'm going to call an asset. And okay, well, if this one doesn't work out quite as well as we're planning, then we've got this one. I was just talking with someone today about, okay, well, that's your idea, but what's your plan B? Right, that's something that will. So there's all those things to sort of work through, but it sounds like there's something to be discussed there for sure.
Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you so much. That was actually really helpful because it's going to give us a really good way of getting into some of the stuff that I want to talk about. It means that we're going to sort of fly through some of these slide sibs as we go along, but. One of the things, Sibs has had that slide up there for a while as a case study, and I can probably refer back to Carrie at Emshla a fair amount because she's just gone through this process with us. We've just invested 50,000 into Emshla for growth investment for growth capital, and then we've committed another 100. So basically, if you're not familiar with Emshla, Carrie is the founder, and she's doing high-end handbags, and has been trading for. She's been making them for about 4 or 5 years, but she launched the brand itself a number of years ago with, I believe, pence in her bank account. So she had taken a big risk and has grown the brand to something where now she's been able to sell. This year we're looking at 75 to 80,000 in trading, and that's. And so we're seeing a lot of traction there. She's got a lot of what's called what in the sort of fashion world you call brand heat. There's a lot of interest around there, and she's been able to do that, and what we call bootstrap that. So that's basically putting a lot of extra time in, a lot of your own time to be able to grow something until it's a revenue generating asset for you. So I'll be referring back to Carrie a little bit because I've learned a lot from her as well in terms of the difficulty of raising money in this environment, particularly for someone who doesn't have you know, access into the sort of the country club friends. You know what I mean? Like go down to the country club and ask my friends to cut me a check for 25K each. You know, that's really difficult. You know, it's very difficult. That's how lots of people start their business, right? Is rich friends, and if you don't have them, you know, that's quite difficult. So I can refer back to that, but we'll talk about a few things, and I'll share all this information afterwards. But you know, all the way from who to connect with, what does a good application look like, what are investors looking for, and all the following details. But I think we'll be able to connect in with your stories here a bit. So in terms of like finding out who's around, let's go to slide connecting with investors, Sibs, if that's all right. I think the best resource I could say just generally is a website called goodfinance.org.uk. So this is run out of, supported by Big Society Capital, who's one of our investors actually. And this website, don't feel like you need to furiously write, because I'll share this PDF with everyone afterwards, or I'll ask Sibs to. But basically that's got a good tool in terms of looking at what type of money you're looking for, where you're located, the type of impact that you're having, and then what it'll do is it'll filter down all the companies that are offering investment that meets those criteria, and will show you where to start, basically. So that's a really good way. There's a lot of people operating under the radar, you know, so that's a really good tool. And then there's the other kind of business development networks in Bristol. So like BSWN, Vosker's got a good network that can help connect with, you know, some pro bono work and some development work. Business West, of course, a lot of incubators and accelerators. I could recommend the NatWest accelerator as well. I've got good reports from the NatWest's accelerator. So all of these, there's lots of sort of places to find insights and resources and guidance, but they're not always that obvious. So, you know, you just sort of need to get into the stream and then say, okay, whenever you're talking to somebody, ask the question, who's someone else I should meet? You know, and then go meet that person, and then go meet that person, right? Because, you know, that's always a good way of sort of expanding your networks and what's available. Going to the next chapter, Sibs. So you find out someone who you want to approach, probably you might be able to, through those networks, be able to get a personal connection, you know, so NatWest or someone else might know someone like me, or someone else at Resonance or whatever, and you might be able to email them directly. But often their website will say, this is who we are, this is what we fund, this is what we're looking for. What are the actual things that they're going to want to know? Well, with your company, for instance, they're going to want to know, well, what's your legal form? You know, what does the company look like? They're going to want to look you up on Companies House. So I think this is something to look at quite early on in terms of getting of registering your business, right? Because the longer you've been registered, the more legitimate you look, basically. So that's not to say that's a barrier to entry, but you know, if you've got a bit of history on Companies House, that's sort of the first place. So when you register a business, you choose to register it as like a company, or a CBS, or a charity, or a CIC, you know, a community interest company, a community benefit society. Sorry, thanks. Please, we're small enough you can interject and ask questions. No, don't apologize, Toya, that's great. So you'll do that, and then when you register that company, that information goes onto a website that's called Companies House, and it shows all the information, all the legal information about every company in the UK, and who are the directors, and its filings, so it's, you know, its accounts, so and where the shares are and all that kind of stuff. So basically that's one first port of call for a investor. They'll look up and see if, you know, if your company's on Companies House, and if it is, then that gives them a little bit of confidence, right? So that's one thing to flag up. How old is your company? So when did you register it? You know, they might also want to know, well, if you were trading before you registered it, when did you start trading? Where are you? What kind of income do you make? You know, is there any revenue that you're making right now, no matter how small? And then of course, what your plans are. And often at this stage, a company will just ask you if you have any business plans. Do you have plans? Do you have, you know, have you spent the time to sort of flesh them out in some way, you know, from a strategic level or from a financial level? So that's one thing that I'll ask when someone comes to me. And it's not to say that if you don't, I won't talk to you. It helps me understand how far along the journey you are, right? And helps me have a good conversation with you rather than assuming something about you, right? So then the other is your financial needs. Often a company, you know, someone will come to us and they're not quite sure how much they need, right? Which is not bad necessarily, but I do need to know that they're confident that they know how much they want, how much money they need to do what they want to do, right? And what's it for, right? So this doesn't need to be an itemized, you know, a very detailed list, but it is a bit of a shopping list, right? So when we were talking, Latoya, about, well, what do you need to grow the business? What do you want the money for? You were quite clear. I need it for equipment, I need it for salaries, and I need it for rent or space, right? So this is what you're going to use it for, you know. Emrich, you might be looking at, you know, okay, well, it's for salaries and it's for to be able to fund my working capital, so I can buy the stuff and install it and build the garden before I get paid for it, right? You know, you might, depending on your model, you might be waiting to get paid until the harvest comes in. You know, it might be a farmer, you know, a farmer's cycle, right? So you need money to be able to do the business in that interim period, right? So that's for working capital. And I guess the last thing that you want to know from a finance perspective is what is your what's called asset base. So an asset is anything that potentially could generate some income, right? We often think of assets as hard assets, right? So like a property, right? But it could be other things. It could be, you know, a website that's got lots of visitors, right? It could be just your business that's turning around a bit of income. It could, you know, an asset could be the cafe or the shop, right? That's an asset, you know.
Maybe a potential contract.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, it depends on how far along the road that is, right? So if you've got someone who, you know, I was talking to someone earlier today who's got sort of letters of intent to say, great, if you do this, go through this pilot phase and get the results you were hoping for, then I intend to buy. You know, that's something that is, you know, to a certain investor, that's what you might call, I'm going to use a bankable. You know what I mean? It depends on who it is. You know, are they? No, not you, but it's who the customer is, right? You know, is it Selfridges, right? You know, or is it Harrods, or is it you know, Tesco's? You know, is it Debenhams? Because if it's Debenhams, well, maybe that's not a good thing, right? Right. So I think those. So yes, but anything that can potentially turn into revenue generating. And then for an impact investor, you're looking at the impact. And this comes back to what we were talking about before, about tracking your impact from the get-go, right? So, and you might not have even started yet, but at this level, when you're looking for impact investment or social investment, you need to be able to point to someone who says, yes, this is the impact that we need, right? So at that stage, you may have been doing it already, and Diamond, you might be able to track in some ways the benefit to the community, right? So then you point to that impact. Whereas someone might be just starting out or trying to do something new with their business, and they might need a partner, right? A community partner, like, you know, like BSWN, who's got insights into a different community and then can kind of vouch for you and say, yeah, that's the impact that we want to see. The intervention that, you know, that Andrew wants to make is something that would be beneficial for the community, right? So then you've got an established entity a bit that's saying, yeah, we think this impact is good. So things like, what impact do you want to make, for who, how much are you looking at, you know, what's the kind of quantity of that, if you can quantify it. Contribution means, would it exist otherwise? Or are you creating some new impact, right? So with Diamond's story, nothing existed beforehand and no one was doing anything, right? So contribution there means that, you know, that community hub is 100% contributing to that outcome. Whereas in other ways, you know, something, it might have happened otherwise, or not just as much impact might have happened, right? Then impact risk is about, well, what might happen otherwise, right? So this is a really good example. It's a bit of a different type thing, but I'm talking to, you know, so the idea of, I'm going to talk as a sector, right? So a sector of what's called modern methods of construction. I don't know if you, but basically this is about building houses in factories with machines in a sustainable way, but somewhere else, right? And then shipping them in and just assembling them, right? Okay, so you've got a really great impact on the sustainability front because they're very sustainable buildings. But you've got an impact externality or impact risk, because what's happened is that you've lost a lot of jobs locally, right? So there's this balance, right? Well, it depends on which ones you've looked at, but yeah, some of them I can definitely agree with on that. So that sort of is some of the things that you'll need to know, kind of, that you should be prepared to be able to share a bit of information with just out the gate. Yeah?
How does the asset not impact?
It's not really a big concern, because what an asset lock does for a social enterprise, for a CIC, for instance, is it prevents you from taking value out of the business, right? But if you're in a contractual relationship with a lender, who then is using that an asset that you own as security for the money, and then you don't, what that does is that means that if you think of it from an accounting perspective, right, you've got an asset on one hand, but you've got a loan on the other, which balances that out. So that actually isn't anymore the company's asset, really. If the company has to be liquidated, that has to be, you know, wound down, then the value that's in the building will then go to pay off the loan, and then if there's anything left over, then that's subject to the asset lock. So it's not, so an asset lock is more about the value of the business, not about individual assets. Okay. If that makes sense. So a CIC can still take a building and sell it and turn it into cash. What they can't do is then, as owners, take all that cash and run away to Cuba. Right? I mean, they could, but does that make sense? Yeah? Okay.
Can I just clarify the risk? So the risk, is it an adverse impact?
So yes, so basically it's like, so the risk often is, to be perfectly blunt,
Yeah.
This happens a lot, as I'm sure you would imagine, is that you've got someone who's, as they'd say in Eastern Canada, from away, yeah, right? That comes in, thinks they know how to solve a problem, right? And then gets a lot of money to try and solve that problem. But actually the community that's there doesn't want the problem solved in that way. So you've got you know, a problem of, okay, the risk is that we don't achieve from an impact perspective what we want to achieve, because, for instance,
the market,
we're not part of that community, so we haven't done the research or to really understand that community, right? And this is something that I experience vis-a-vis the park, for instance, up in Knoll West. Is like that quite often they get people coming in that are trying to kind of fix Knoll West from the outside, right?
Yeah.
But actually, it needs to be the community that goes first, right? But that's impact risk, right? So the impact sought was to do something for the community, but actually it didn't work out the way that they wanted it to.
Get the buy-in.
Because the buy-in wasn't there,
Yeah.
right? So that's part. It's
I see, yeah.
it's if we want to use this money to create some impact, what's the risk that that impact is not going to be achieved, and hence the money's not been used to do what we want with it, right? Because as a funder, we're not the one that are actually doing it, right? It's you guys that are doing it.
So it's good to try and identify that or look at ways to mitigate that in some way then. If you're,
As a social or impact investor, we'll look at ways of trying to say, okay, and we'll get onto this, but are you the right people to try and achieve that impact? Is this the right way to try and achieve impact? How do we just it's a bit of mitigating the sort of negative consequences of that, right? Can we flip to the next slide, please?
How long does the process usually take on average?
It can take a while. I'd say my average is 3 months, 3 to 4 months.
That's not a while.
That is not a while.
To get to something where we can agree and say, yeah, we want to invest, and then there's the sort of like, actually, do you know what? Can we skip this one?
Yeah.
And go to the double diamond. So I don't know, is anyone familiar with the double diamond structure? So this is out of the, thanks, that's great. This is out of the sort of design world. And basically what this means is that we've got one process that's followed by another, one sort of interaction that's followed by another interaction, right? So it's about diverging and trying to find as much information out as possible, and then converging to try and answer trying to find out what those, try and find out the answers to those. And then you come and you say, okay, great. Now my key question, I know what the questions are. So then we'll go and we'll try and find more information to answer the questions. And then we'll start narrowing things down again to come in for landing, right? So the way that I look at this is that the first part of the stage, the part that probably takes roughly 2 to 3 months, if things are kind of, if the information is there, is called discovery, and it's about investing in the right thing. Okay, that's what at this stage investors will be interested in, is like, well, what's the right thing, right? And then they'll move into a phase called due diligence, which I phrase investing in the thing right. Okay, so that means that of all the ways that we could, work out our relationship, let's do it in a good way, right? So I'll just have a quick run through this and then maybe open it up to some questions. But basically, for us, and I think this would be, other investors might not look at this as intuitive to them, but I think they mostly operate in this way, in various ways. Now, the first phase may be quite shorter for them. It might be just an application form, right? Where they're looking for some key things, and then they'll move on into the second phase. But so at point 0, you've kind of, okay, I know they exist, right? And then you move into a phase into where you're sort of completing a bit of high-level information about what we just talked about. So things like, who are you? What are you doing? How long have you been doing it? Are you earning any money? Do you have assets? Do you have plans? Like those kinds of things. And then for us at that stage, we'll come together, we'll have a meeting, and that'll be, okay, is there something to pursue here or not? You know, if not, fine. You know, I'm very North American salesy, blah blah. It's like a no's fine. You know, and a no, because then it gets everyone moving on to something where you can get a yes, right? We'll pass as friends, and maybe next time, you know, it could work out, right? So this is the discussion of fit, and it's like, well, does our fin, what are you trying to do, and can our fund help you do that, right? If we get through that stage, then what we'll do is we'll work with you to develop out a proposal. Right, so this isn't, it's not Dragon's Den, you know. It's there's a slide that I've got, but don't worry about it. But it's not, you know, Dragon's Den, or you pitch, and we either love you or you get kicked out and go home, right? This is about trying to find out how to bring out the full information of the proposal. So we'll work with you. You'll work to develop out the proposal, right? In terms of, well, okay, at the discussion of fit, I might say, well, I need a bit more information on this and a bit more information on that and blah, blah. And then while you're doing that, what I'm doing in the background is doing my research, right? I'm trying to find out more about who you are and what you've been doing. I look on Companies House, I look at, you know, your sector, you know, it could be cosmetics, you know, what's going on in the cosmetics sector, because I'm probably learning about that sector at the same time, right? And then in the background, I'm also doing a bit of impact research. I'm trying to say, well, what are you trying to achieve on the impact side of things? Who can I talk to say, well, can they verify that what you're trying to do is a good thing? You know, those kinds of things, right? So then we'll come to a proposal stage where we'll sort of have that all fleshed out. And that's not a big document. It's more a series of bits of information, right? Where I'm now, or the banker or the investor is just much more familiar with what you're trying to do, right? And then we'll start poking a little bit and kicking the tires. And then this is where it becomes a little bit like, okay, let's try and, okay, tell me more about this, tell me more about that. So what I've done there in this framework is to say, okay, well, first we'll probably talk about impact. You know, I'll say, okay, tell me about your impact. Tell me about how you're going to do it. Who, you know, I'm asking you to sort of, you've told me about what the impact is. Now I want you to, now an investor will want you to show me, right? So I do this great stuff in the community. Okay, great. Can we talk to some community members about the great stuff that you're doing, right? Who are the people that you've helped, you know, so, or show me that, you know, if it's an environmental intervention that, you know, you've had this sort of in pilot phase that you've been able to have, say, this amount of impact on air quality or whatever, right? So, and then we'll go into the business model and I'll say, okay, great. How does that work with, you know, how you're earning money or plan to earn money, and how you're spending money and how you plan to spend money, right? So, okay, show me that works. And okay, are you spending enough on salaries? Do you need to think about maybe doing it's a great idea to have a community space, but, you know, as we talked about before, maybe a pop-up might be a good, you know, place to move forward or whatever. So that's sort of the business strategy. And then the next thing is called the unit model. And basically that's a kind of, that probably shouldn't be in there. It's a bit too technical languagey, but that's about break even. So when you're investing, you're probably going to be losing money for a little while, right? Your costs are higher than your revenues. What you need to be doing is, and often someone needs a bit of a financial planner to help them do this, and just craft out a bit of a plan to say, okay, this is when if we keep growing at this rate, this is when we project to break even, right? And that's a bit of a technical work, and often I find that's a bit of a hang up. And to be honest, in this sector, that is a bit of a gap in terms of support. But I know Business West will do a bit of support for doing some financial help and that kind of thing.
More than a very sophisticated cash flow.
It can be a cash, yeah. It doesn't need to be super detailed, to be honest. Yeah, but it needs to be built. It's sort of, what are your assumptions and how does that work? We all right? I know we're at 7 now, so I'm going to try and bring this into land a little bit. But basically,
just in that section there, because obviously there's a dialogue there, it's a conversation, in which you offer challenge.
Yes.
And the other individual who's going through that process, if they're really well planned and strategic, they can offer challenge back and say nothing in the
Yeah.
that's not what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Or they can coalesce with all your ideas and try and persuade you, so how strategically do you do it?
So in the converge section, and this is something where I get a bit uncomfortable as well, to be completely honest. But yeah, between 0 and 2, that's good cop. Okay, between 2 and 3, that's bad cop. Yeah. and I find that a bit of a challenge sometimes, to be honest. I had to, but it is like, okay, great. This is a great idea. I'm convinced that it could work. Now I need to get under the skin of, okay, is this something real here, or is it, is it a bit of, as they'd say in Alberta, in Western Canada, is it all hat and no cattle? Right? Because often things are, you see these pitches or whatever, I don't know, on Dragon's Den or whatever, and it's like, oh, like, you see the growth, you see the projected revenues that you're going to get over 5 years. It's right? And you're like, no, really? Okay, we need to interrogate that a little bit. So that's about evidencing, right? So at point 3, then we look at this and go, okay, great. You've answered most of my questions. We've still got some questions outstanding, but there's enough that's been answered vis-a-vis what's outstanding to move things forward. And what that will be is that we'll then decide to move forward to a committee decision, right? So, and if it's a bank, it'll be your account manager deciding, I'm going to present this to the credit committee, right? So then there's a bit more information that needs to be worked up. We need to keep gathering it. So this is the diverge bit again. We're going to gather more information. We're going to go over our market research again. I'm going to be asking about the numbers again, blah, 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 blah. Then I'm going to, the way we operate is, and the way most banks operate is then they create an internal paper, an internal sort of overview of the business that says, this is what the business is doing, this is why we should invest in them. You won't see that, right? But that'll go to the credit committee or the investment committee. And then what your account manager, or what I'm doing in the background here, is I'm trying to get the evidence to support the case, right? But I'm also doing my risk analysis to say, well, okay, if things go wrong, what's going to happen, right? So today I had a meeting with someone and I said, look, we're heading into probably a pretty big recession here. I need to know your plan B. What's your plan B, right? Because I'm willing to, we might be willing to invest, but we need to know that the person who's taking that investment is not just set on one goal only, but can be a bit adaptable. So that's a bit of the risk analysis piece. And then we'll go and we'll have this big, then I do the Dragon's Den to the committee on your behalf. And this is where this whole process has been going, is I need to be, in the way that we operate, is I need to be as confident in your business as you are, right? Because I'm the one that's going to be presenting it and defending it to our committee. And typically that's what happens with the bank too. It's maybe a little less in depth, but your account manager needs to be committed to what you're wanting to achieve, because they're the ones that are going to go ahead and go to the credit committee and say, this is why we should invest in these guys, right? So then supposing we get a positive decision, then that's where all the difficult stuff happens. Because it's legals, it's things like structuring the loan. We'll send out heads of terms. Sibs, we can go to that last slide actually. You can find it. It's all right. No worries. So we'll send out a document that's called heads of terms, and this is basically an offer, right? This is what we think we can offer you. Is that cool? It's not quite over yet one. You're gonna see my Dragon's Den slide. There you go. Not bad, hey? You know, just nicked it off the internet. That's me. You know, that's your account manager representing the company to the committee, right? And then the last thing is, so heads of terms, and what we might do is we might, in those heads of terms, we might say, great, we really want to, we'd love to invest, but we need you to appoint 2 people to the board because we don't want it to just be a one-person show. You know, that, often it's about, well, we need someone who's got a bit of financial experience on the board. You know, those kinds of things. We'll talk about, well, what would a repayment structure look like? You know, there's various things that a lender can, you know, levers that they can pull. So, you know, they might give you what's called a capital repayment holiday for the first year or 2, which is basically you're just paying the interest back, which means your payments for the first, say, 2 years would be very small and gives you the opportunity to use the money to grow your revenues to the point when then you start paying back the principal, the actual part of the loan, then you've got more ability to do that, basically, headroom. You know, and then there's all the kind of checks to make sure that, you know, the money's going to be used for what it's intended to be. So there's corporate ID checks, there's anti-money laundering checks, director searches. We got to get into legal agreements. You know, say there is a asset, you know, so if you're talking about an asset finance company, they might want some security over the equipment, you know, so then there's, how does that security work? So basically if you go under, then they have the ability to then take the equipment and sell it on to recoup some of their investment. Those kinds of things.
What's a corporate ID?
Corporate ID is that stuff around company's house. So basically, have you done all the stuff that they, you know, so filing your annual reports and things like that. Yeah. Is there a director, you know, is there a charge against a director somewhere? Like those kinds of things. And then anti-money laundering is stuff that the FCA wants us to do to make sure that. No, sorry? I don't think so. I don't think so. Watch out, you never know who's listening.
So, and again, with these, it's you guys invest in for-profit with one director, CICs, charities. You are open to all except sole traders, is that right?
Sole traders, there's no hard and fast rule, actually, Sibs. Yeah, I mean, I think what we would want to see from a sole trader is that as a that orange, which is a precondition to the drawdown, is that we'd want to see that sole trader probably incorporate in some way. Yeah. And then formalize sort of an advisory, you know. So basically us ourselves, and other companies will look at it differently, but us ourselves will try and we're wanting to sort of take you to that next level of business organizationally as well as financially, right? Because we think that actually, you know, some things are, sometimes the sole trader is exactly what you should be doing, you know, if you're a consultant or if you're an advisor of some sort, or, you know, if there's something, a reason, it's nothing to do with that. But for us, I think with the level of money that we would be investing, we would think that as a sole trader, you would then want to grow the business into something that is more of an entity in and of itself as well.
With the directors that you add, is that,
with the advisors, or is it non-execs that kind of come on? Is it non-execs?
Yeah. So basically that's covering sort of the governance side of things, so that it's not, so that there's a bit of a checks and balances, right? Because if you look at sort of impact investing or whatever, ESG, so there's environmental, there's social, and then there's governance. Yeah. And making sure that the business and the investment is run in a way that's got good governance. Yeah. Around it to sort of maximize the longevity of the business itself. Okay. You know, good governance, you know, governance can be overburdening, definitely. I've experienced that, but good governance actually is really helpful to keep things on on the rails, as it were, right? And often a real challenge, and this is a huge, is trying to find people who are willing to be, non-execs or on the board.
Yeah. But don't you guys find them?
Well, we can try and help, but they need to be people who work with you, really.
Okay.
We want people who are supportive of you and that you want on your board, not just that we want on our board. Sometimes we'll take an advisory position on a board.
Yeah.
But yeah, so, and I think this is where it's slightly different than sort of and CIC is sort of in the middle, I think. But from a private limited company perspective, often people will pay their board members, right? Not much. I mean, maybe much. A lot of people make quite a good living being board members, right? But you don't have to necessarily pay them much, but there is a bit of incentive to be on the board. And a lot of charities, of course, you can't be remunerated to be a trustee. CICs are really caught in the middle, where there's this sort of idea that the board members shouldn't be paid, right? But they actually do need board members. So I find that CICs often struggle to get board members that are really good.
We've noticed that.
Yeah.
Just a quick random.
Yeah, Andrew. Yeah.
Would you consider like large-scale music festivals?
Would we consider potentially? But I'm not really sure that personally, our money would be the best for that, because our money is more for kind of long-term, 8-year type investments. Whereas a music festival, I would think the best type of money would be about getting some money up front, running the music festival, and then paying it all back, right? Because then you're shortening the time and of course, the amount of interest that you pay is a function of time plus money, right? So most festivals, I think, or things like that are seasonal, will try and find someone who's willing to pay on that short, would be willing to be repaid back quite a substantial. So something like that, you might want to say, could you pre-sell a number of tickets, right? That could say, great, I've got this amount of revenue in the bank already. And then a lender would say, okay, well, if you've got that amount of money in the bank already, and I only have to fund half of it, then I'd be willing to do that. So crowdfunding's a really interesting thing, because it's really proven to be a good way to access startup capital. Yeah, of course.
Sorry, I just wanted to find out, the project plan that I gave. So is it allowed to be put through as it's kind of like, I don't know which one to kind of go with, or can I go with both of them? Because the property side of it, obviously I'm thinking of a limited company, but then the CIC side is for the hub.
Yeah.
I don't really know how I'd collaborate.
Yeah, no, often there's like, as companies or social enterprises grow, there's kind of a corporate structure. Mm-hmm. And often I've seen this where you've got sort of a charity on the one side that's drawing down grants to do something that's not really generating any revenue. Mm-hmm. And then you've got a company over here that's able to trade.
Okay.
Right? Mm-hmm. So one of the prime examples of that is a company that we've worked with called, familiar with Frank Water?
No.
So they're a water charity, but they also dealing with, water accessibility in sub-Saharan Africa and, water resources here, those kinds of things. But they also have a corporate, a trading arm that sells water at festivals and things like that, right? So, but what they've been able to do is they've split those two functions.
Okay.
So this is the charity. This is the CIC. This is the charity that can receive donations, right? This is the CIC that sells the stuff, right? And then the profits from the CIC. So the CIC is owned by the charity.
Okay.
Right, and all the profits from the CIC are then remitted to the charity.
Yeah. Okay, because
it's not actually that complex. You think it's complex, but it's just two sets of books.
It's kind of the same thing. What I was going to set up with because I run a food pantry in the building, And the food pantry, you know, if we was, what do you call it, a food hub, that's a charity, what they keep asking me to do, like officially. So I run a food bank at the moment over in the apartment, but it's not official. So I let Caring in Bristol, is another organisation I work with, I let them facilitate it. So basically, everyone keeps asking me, the supermarkets, "Hi Diamond, can I donate to your So sometimes if I can be bothered, I'll take it. If I can't, I don't. But I am not under that obligation to take it, because I haven't done that.
Yes.
So what they keep asking me is, Diamond, why don't you put a charity on the side of your organisation for the food bank? Because everyone comes to your hub for the food bank. But I always let Caring in Bristol just do the food bank in my hub.
Yeah.
Is that where they're based, in your hub?
No, they go to all different buildings to facilitate.
Because I'm going to do some work.
Yeah, they're really good, really good. So they come and do that. But everyone always says to me, Diamond, why don't you do your own charity of a food bank? Because Marks and Spencer have asked me, Morrison's asked, they always ask me to come and collect the stuff. So this is why I was thinking, is there a way that it wouldn't mess it up, would it? It wouldn't mess it up, would it, if there was, say, three arms.
Limited, a
Yeah,
CIC and a charity.
that's right. Would it mess it up?
Well, my question would be, what function is the CIC offering then? Because the CIC is a bit of a halfway house that was created by the government, 10 years ago, and it's sort of like, it's fine, but it's not. It's trying to bring those two things together. Whereas if you've got them separately, then why do they need to be together to a certain degree? But I think, can we just go back to the double diamond? Because that's a really good question that we'd want to answer at the first sort of converge side of things. Just that. So between 2 and 3, that's where we'd want to sort of answer kind of your business model question, right? And say, well, what's the best way of structuring this? How would it work? How do the cash flows work between the two businesses and things like that?
So
the other type.
Expect us to have the answer at that point. You'd help us advise on that, would you?
I'd ask the question.
Okay.
And then I might suggest ways of answering the question.
Okay.
We are quite, as a regulated entity, we're quite restricted in the amount of advice we can give, right? And we're not meant to advise and sell money at the same time.
Of course.
You can't do those two things together after 2008, which makes sense. But what I would say is, this is a question that you should ask, and these are sort of the benefits of doing it this way or the other. You mean, just while we're on that topic, the other thing that I often find is that people who are at this stage have a lot of great ideas. Their businesses, they're seeing, people are asking them to do this and that, and they've got great ideas, and we could do this and we could do that and all that kind of stuff. But what they haven't done is been able to prioritize those, to be able to say, well, actually, the first thing we should do is this, and then once we've done that, then we're going to do this, and then once we've done that,
I've been saying that the first thing that we've got to do is the CIC is good, but it don't generate enough income. The staff need to be paid. There's those people who've got to be paid. You've got to rely on funding. That ain't my main source of income. That's why I have to have my business, which is giving me my money. So when that don't pay anything, I've got some money. I don't have to worry about that. This is something that I'm passionate about doing. I enjoy it, giving back to the community. But that's why I thought of the property aspect of it, of having an investment, of using that project plan, and then I'm creating my own kind of revenue and it's my own sustainability for me to be able to carry the other project forward. Having a charity with the food bank is very good. I like it. I like the module, but it ain't bringing me no money, and it's not doing nothing. It's not helping me on what I need to do, but it's helping the people. So that's my last priority.
So I think on that, and this is again something that is really good to be able to think about and articulate, and something that a lender will want to say is, okay, well that, without being, moving into bad cop mode to a certain degree, it's not bad. It's just more of testing that, you don't buy a car without going for a test drive, right? It's like, do the wheels turn, and is the engine there? Yeah, that's true. But you know, one of the things is, okay, great. That's the, say, affordable housing. That's a need in the community. That's this. That's a, you know, is the best way to achieve that for you doing that yourself, or is the best way to do that, or to partner with someone, you know, like Brighter Paces or a housing association or something like that, that can then you provide, you know, then there's a partnership where you say provide all the community buy-in that they lack because they're not really embedded into the community, and they provide the capital and the funding and the expertise to get it done. Now, trade-off on that, okay, the trade-off is loss of control, right? And then it comes down to, well, how, you know, then you're talking about this sort of the sort of spectrum of idealism versus practicality, right? It's like, okay, how idealistic do I need to be, and it's not to say that you shouldn't be doing it all on your own, because maybe you are the right person to deliver that, right? It's just those will be the questions that you'll get asked when talking about these things, because what an investor is trying to do, or at least what we're trying to do, is really refine it into something that's deliverable.
So what would they have said? That I should have because obviously that's what they want. So should I be partnering with Brighter Places? Is that what they're going to say to me? So why don't you partner with Brighter Places? Because Brighter Places want me. I've got them eating with Sally Gilbert in the morning. They're on my back. They're on my back. Do you know what I mean? Every minute talking about it. They love it. They love the idea. But what I'm worried about,
because you don't know whether you.
And this is it.
So this comes back to who you are, right, and your corporate structure, right? So the last thing, actually, we didn't mention this, and I'm really glad. And I do apologize. I'm probably going to have to leave in 7:30, 7:40-ish. Due to children and family commitments, but I think you're having a really good discussion. But I'm really glad you brought that up, because the last thing I didn't mention is people in that sort of inquiry phase. So between 2 and 3, who's involved, right? And what kind of experience they have. Maybe you don't have any experience in this particular venture, you know, in housing or in this particular venture, but maybe you've got an advisor or someone else
I've got the architect
who does, you know, so you've got an architect who's willing to give you free time, but also sit on the board, and maybe Brighter Places rather than them delivering it. And then I've got
that's made it a bit hard for them, because then I've got Firmstone Developments who are developing St Catherine's Place. Because I own a business over there, I've got a very good relationship with them. So they've, you know, I can get them to do certain work what needs carried out. They know about the hub, they know about everything. You know, so I've got kind of the connects. It wouldn't even be like, oh, I need to be built a team or anything like that. I can do that. I'm quite competent in doing stuff like that. But my own general knowledge, I would say, like you know, like on a housing element, I would say no, that's not my forte. I would leave that to them.
So I think that's what, you know, we all have to, when we're talking about the business and all the different things that are going on, is who, you know, you might be doing it on your own, but even then, I think it's still a team effort. You know, there's people that you won't know things. You know, part of your job really is to try and find the people who will know things and bring them on board.
And that's
right.
Exactly what I do.
And that's what a lender is looking for. A lender is also looking for, you know, people who are in your ear, who are giving you good advice.
Okay.
Right.
Let's check if we've got something online.
Yeah. Good. Yeah.
That's perfect. Thank you.
No problem, Stas.
Hello, they're on the Zoom, just wanted to check if you got any questions, anything that you want to say about the diagram or anything that you've heard.
No, I'm happy, thank you.
Yeah? Okay.
I just wanted to ask, how does the negotiations, what does the negotiation looks like on the terms of offer? How do you negotiate the return on the money or the investment?
Yeah, okay, so someone will probably come back to you. If they've decided to invest, they'll probably come back with sort of what's called heads of terms, which is a document that says, you know, this is what we're prepared to lend, and this is what you know, the price might be. So in terms of percent, or maybe it's a stake in the business, so that would be equity. You know, so
Yeah.
say for, you know, this amount of money, we'd want this percentage of future revenues, which is understood to be a part of the business. We've also done Sharia compliant lending. So that's lending that is not equity, and it's not interest bearing loan, but what it is some sort of basically a revenue sharing model where you share the benefits but also the risks of the activity. So those things will come out in a list and say, well, this is what we're prepared to offer. And then it's at that point where you can say, oh, okay, yeah, well, you know, I'm not sure I understand this. I'm not sure I'm happy with that. Is there any flexibility on that? You know, at that point, you might want to say, are there other irons in the fire? You know, are there other things that, you know, I've got a bird in the hand, you know, I've got, but my advice is not advice, but, you know, my thinking on that would be, you know, our customer care then would say, you know, are there other offers? Are there other ways of financing this? And then so you know that you're not kind of paying too much for the money, or that the terms are not right. You know, you're allowed to go and have an advisor look over that or whatever. So yeah, that's what I would say. I mean, to be completely honest, those things aren't always up for a lot of negotiation. You know, there's a bit of wiggle room. I've got to be, and I'll be honest as well. You know, I've got most of my experience with BBRC, and no one has of yet come back with my terms and said I don't like them.
That's good to know. That's good to know.
I don't know if that says anything about me or about other people. I'm not sure what that means, but I've not really got into a position where someone's like, "What are you talking about? You're crazy."
Yeah, and so my next question and my final question, do you kind of give the business model template, or do we need to find one of our own?
Yeah, I can share some of that with you. So often when we're in sort of the discussion of fit stage and sort of developing out the proposal, you know, it might be quite early on, and I will ask someone to sort of go and have a think and just write out their business model on a page so we can have a chat about it. I can share that resource with the team.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you, Ryan. I've got to save you because you've got kids to go home to and things like that. Would you be contactable, or somebody drop me an email or something like that if they have any further questions? What I would say is, Ryan, your brilliant presentation has highlighted some areas, and I think this is a great slide. Nobody is going to give anybody 50K plus without following some process and engaging in with due diligence, right? So if you want to grow a business, you want to attract investment, you want to scale it, at some stage you're going to bounce up against some of this stuff. And I think the important thing to know is that you can be very naive. And that's where BSWN comes in. So, because that conversation around, should I be a charity or should I be, you know, just engage, talk to people, understand that there are options. You've got to make a decision at the end of the day. You're the person. People will be reluctant to give you what they call advice for a whole bunch of professional reasons, because if the advice is wrong, then if it's with a solicitor or somebody who's got, you know, professionally qualified to give you that advice, you might be able to go back and challenge that. But, you know, the main thing is knowing your options. And also, if you are presenting to somebody and you're wanting to take them on a journey with you, and you want them to engage, and you want them to have the courage to stand up in front of their board of directors and actually commit to putting your case forward for investment, which if it goes wrong, they've got to account for in another way, then yeah, you want to engage them. You want to embed them in that kind of journey. You want to give them information. You want to utilize their skills and expertise to pitch some stuff. But you don't want to be floaty and naive when it comes down to key aspects of what you're trying to do.
Yeah, can I interject there, Derek, just real quick? And this will be the last, just to circle back to the first conversation we had, which was about grants, right, and what to do. So we've got a great program with BSWN and Vosker and School for Social Enterprise called the Local Access Program. And that is, there is a bit of grant money that's involved with that. But basically what that is, and I'm just going to get up here because it's easier to point, is if someone comes to us at this stage, right? And we think, do you know what? Actually, if it gets to this stage, there's a good chance we're going to move forward. That's cool. Like, we're really interested in that. But basically, to get to this stage takes a lot of effort, right? And it takes a lot of your time, and you're not getting paid for that time, right? And it might take, you know, you might need to buy in some professional advice somewhere. You might need to get an accountant to work on yours, you know. So to get through that stage is going to cost you money, and that's what that grant from Local Access is for, right? So BSWN is going to be really helpful in helping you build out this proposal, right? But that money is going to kind of help you get through that stage here. And that's where, so someone like Carrie at Amshala, that's where that money really came in handy, because we were able to use that to get, you know, a business coach for her and a bit of financial help, right, to build that out. But we were also able to put a bit of money into the business so that she could just pay for her time that it required. I mean, hours and hours of time to put all this together, right? Where she's not selling the bags, for instance, right? Or, you know, whatever. So there's little interventions like that that are quite good. But even if you can't access that intervention, but you could access some other type of grant, then I would say, well, what can you do to move you forward in that journey, to pull that information together, to get that prepared so that you're turning that one-time grant money into renewable revenue money, right? Anyway, sorry for interrupting.
Just really quick, just the last question.
That's fine.
Who do the applications come to? They come direct to yourself?
Yeah, they'll come into me and my team, yeah. But typically I'm the one looking at them first.
Are you based in Desktop?
Yeah, we're just down in Death Lodge, yeah.
Well,
anyway,
thank you again, everybody.
Yeah,
and I hope you've enjoyed today. And as I say, if you need any support, come to us at BSWN, and we're happy to help and talk. All the best. Have a good evening, everybody, and thank you for turning up.
Yeah.
We need to move anyway.
Absolutely.
Did you?
Yeah, a couple of months ago.
Okay.
And that's why I'm ahead.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay. I remember that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was in the canteen.
Yeah. Okay. I didn't know you manufactured your product.
Yeah.
Because Ed came to me and he's like, oh, you should talk to LaToya. And I think I did. And then I kind of left that conversation, or I saw what was going on. And I was like, I'm not sure what she needs investment for, because if she's just, selling it on, then that should be just a revenue. You just grow it by a revenue. But if you make it, then I totally get that. Yeah, okay. I had no idea that. Okay. Ooh, still on. Here.
I'm doing the last. Even the grammar, probably like 2 years.